as well as XR products. And today I'm going to be giving a brief overview of Experience Builder and how it compares to Web App Builder. I'm going to go through a basic walkthrough of Experience Builder and show a quick demo video of a site that I've created. Then at the end, I'll do a wrap up and some takeaways, and then we'll open it up for Q&A. So as a developer, I've created websites using a variety of tools and languages. I've used everything from Squarespace, which is a drag and drop model that doesn't require any coding knowledge, to creating a site from scratch with just JavaScript, CSS, and HTML. But one of my favorite tools I've used has been Web App Builder. I appreciate the variety of widgets, and I've gotten very comfortable adjusting those widgets or creating custom ones through code. So I was both excited and hesitant when I heard about Experience Builder. Hesitant because I'll have to learn a new system, which takes time, but I was excited to see what kinds of tools Experience Builder has to offer. After jumping into Experience Builder over the past couple of weeks, I'm really excited to share with you guys today what it has to offer. For those of you who don't know, Experience Builder is Esri's new platform for creating web applications. If you're currently working with Web App Builder, don't worry, Esri will continue to support both platforms. One limitation of Web App Builder is that it's really only meant for one kind of a site, which is a single page application that's centered around a map and has other widgets or information around the edges. I'm sure most of you have seen applications like that. And while that can be very useful for many different things, it doesn't cover every single scenario. Experience Builder extends that map and data-oriented idea to include scrolling page and multi-page applications. It uses a simple drag and drop model so that you can fully customize the look and flow of your application without having to do any coding. You can now have multiple maps for the user to interact with in your site, or make an app that's less map-centered and has more text information and images, or simply use it as an easier way to customize your map-centered application. Now, there are still valid reasons for choosing Web App Builder over Experience Builder for some applications. I'll go over a more direct comparison towards the end of the presentation so you can determine which one works best for each of your projects. Let's look at some of the templates we have to work with in Experience. Right away, you'll notice we still have some of the templates that Web App Builder offers, such as the foldable and jewelry box themes. These themes are map-centered. However, we also have new themes that can be more focused on images or text instead of just maps. Some examples are Epic, which is a scrolling page application, or Scenic, a multi-page app. I chose Epic for my first application. When you open the template, you'll see a list of example rows you can use. I went through and deleted some, keeping the ones that looked the most interesting to me. You can delete an item by just clicking on it and hitting backspace or delete. It's very easy. I also added some of my own custom rows with additional maps. You're not confined to the template you chose at the beginning. You can add a new template-based page or empty page by going to the Pages tab here on the left and clicking this plus page icon. For example, even though I started with Epic, which is a single page scrolling application, I added an additional page to mine. So this is my application right here. I created an app with data on commuting, housing, and population across the country. Now, I partially chose this data because I just purchased a home and all of these factors mattered to me. But the real reason was so I could show off the American Community Survey layers. Esri hosts these layers publicly for free and updates them every year when the new data comes out from the Census Bureau. I just discovered these layers in the past year, and I highly recommend looking them up to use in your own applications. They cover a wide variety of topics. I chose a couple and changed their color and pop-up information for this app. You can interact with each of the maps individually with different widgets attached to them, such as legends or interactive lists. This is the layer on housing information. It includes demographics such as the median household income, number of renter-occupied housing units, and distribution of the age of the population. Right here on the left, I set this list to filter the map by the search results. And when you click on an item in the list, it zooms to that item on the map. And these are all adjustable. I'll show you some of them a little bit later on, how you can set these up in your own application. So in my application, I told you I have two pages. This is the main scrolling page based on the Epic. And then I also added a separate page using the foldable theme. You'll notice that this page looks very similar to a Web App Builder application, but it can now be connected to the rest of my site instead of only have the option of being a standalone page. I can also add any layout items or widgets to this page that I can add to the other one. For example, I have the same survey in both pages. To add new rows or widgets, I go to this plus tab on the left. The widgets are organized into functional or layout widgets. You can drag and drop widgets or layouts to the application and then resize them to get them to line up correctly. For example, I created the housing map by dragging a map widget onto the screen and attaching it to one of the maps for my organization by selecting it in the Contents tab. You can edit the initial extent here if you would like to. I set mine to Colorado, even though the map itself defaults to the US. Next, I dragged the legend widget onto the map and attached it to this map widget so that it shows the legend for the correct layers. This is how you can have multiple maps and legends on the same application. You can resize or move both of these sections around to complete your layout. Any custom widgets will show under the basic widgets after you've run the client. Beneath those are the layout and section widgets. These will help you to keep your content orderly and easy to update, as well as make your site look professional with minimal effort. As an example, the Views Navigation widget allows you to easily create a series of sections that users can flip through. Right when you drag it onto the screen, it gives you this basic design options you can select from. You can then edit each of the views it flips through to give further information to the user. There are many other widgets available. As you can see, I've used various text blocks, images, and buttons, along with the maps in my application. All of these widgets are very straightforward and easy to use, even for someone with no coding knowledge at all. You can change the widget settings in the Content tab and manage the display in the Style tab. Some of the widgets, including the Map widget, have a list of tools that you can turn on or off. You'll notice these have the same names as widgets from Web App Builder. The reason they're listed as tools instead of widgets in that other left-hand panel we were looking at is because they're displayed inside of the Maps container in the site. Each map can have its own set of tools. One thing to note with these tools is that they're not all quite the same as in Web App Builder. For example, the Layers tool doesn't allow you to turn layers on and off, it just shows a list of layers, and the search bar is not configurable. I'll touch more on that later when I compare experience in Web App Builder. One of the new widgets is Survey, which allows you to embed current surveys or create new ones from Survey 123. You may have noticed mine on commute times. If any of you were at Nick's workshop yesterday and created your own survey, you can now include it in your own custom website. I created the one in my application from right inside Experience Builder. It's very easy to do. One of the new features Experience has added is Actions. Actions provide an easy way for you to attach triggers to elements such as buttons or lists to create interactions with the map without having to write code. I've attached an action to this list widget so that it zooms to the map when a feature is selected. I've also turned on the search tool and set it to filter the map based on the search results. You can also very easily add links to other pages with actions. I added an action to this full screen button, which is partially covered up right here, that takes you to my foldable page. And I can also add a button on that page that takes you back here for easy navigation. Experience Builder also comes with a nice set of themes you can use and customize. I started with the dark theme and changed the accent color to a bright teal. You can also create custom themes here that your company can use across their applications for consistency. You can control the font, the color, the sizing, pretty much everything. While you're developing, you can view your application in tablet or phone view by clicking their icons up here in the top bar. All of the layouts in Experience Builder are mobile friendly, but you can also make changes here that will only apply to tablet or phone if you want to optimize your site for mobile, or if you just don't like how Experience has automatically laid it out. If you navigate to the Data tab, you can view all the data sources currently in your application and click on them to see which widgets are using them. You can also add all of your maps and features here at the beginning to make it easier to add them in your application as you develop it. This is a great tool if you're updating data in the future and want to make sure you've checked all the locations it's used in to make sure you didn't mess anything up. So let's talk about some of the main differences between Experience Builder and Web App Builder. so you can decide which one will best fit your needs. We've already seen that Experience offers multi-map and multi-page applications with more design options for the developer, including scrolling pages and adjustable content. You can also have both 2D and 3D maps in the same application with Experience, whereas Web App Builder could only support one at a time since it could only have one map. Widgets can have actions managing both 2D and 3D maps at the same time in Experience. For example, you can create actions that will zoom to the same location on 2 different maps when you click a button. Experience uses the 4x JavaScript API, while Web App uses 3x. This means that when you create custom widgets with Experience Builder, you'll be writing with React and TypeScript instead of Dojo and DOM. React has better performance and reusability than Dojo and is widely used, so it's a great time to learn it if you haven't already. The 4x JavaScript API also supports the ability to work with 3D maps and web scenes, so you can easily customize them for your widgets. Experience Builder still uses Jumu as the main framework for handling the style, interface, themes, and widgets, so you'll notice that if you're comfortable with the code. One of the current downsides to Experience over Web App Builder is that Experience doesn't have all of the widgets that Web App Builder provides. Web App Builder has over 70 widgets available for use, but Experience only has a small portion of those currently implemented. And as I stated earlier, some of them don't have the full functionality of their counterpart in Web App Builder. However, Esri is planning on rolling those widgets out incrementally, and users are already developing some of them on their own. For example, I found someone who had posted their version of the print widget with one quick Google search. Before you switch over any existing applications, make sure you have or can recreate the necessary tools. To add custom widgets to your application, you need to add them to the Your Extensions folder in the client directory. To run Experience Builder without custom widgets, you only need to run npm start in the server folder, but you'll need to open a separate command prompt running in the client folder for Experience Builder to see your custom widgets. It took me a minute to figure that out, so I thought I'd just quickly mention it. Webpack will be watching any changes you make in the client, so just keep an eye on it to make sure the text is always green when you save. This is a side-by-side comparison of the simple widgets that Esri includes in both Web App Builder and Experience Builder, just to give you a glimpse of the code. Don't worry, I won't stay here long. You'll notice they both import the base widget from Jumu, with React using import instead of define. The creation of the actual widget happens in the render function in Experience instead of inside the class declaration. Despite these minor differences, if you're familiar with writing custom widgets in Web App Builder, you can easily understand what's going on in the React code. I know writing it yourself is a different story, but there are plenty of places you can go to learn React online. Again, you don't need to worry if you're not a developer, because Esri has made a great user interface for you to create beautiful applications without any coding. And the community is already adding new widgets you can use in your apps if you're missing some. I encourage you to open Experience Builder and try it out when you have a chance. I think you'll be just as thrilled as I was to find out how easy it was to make a user-friendly and professional-looking site in a matter of minutes. Thanks so much for listening. We have some time for Q&A now, so if you have a question, you can either type it in the Q&A chat at the bottom of the screen or hit the raise your hand button.
Thank you very much, Malaika. I appreciate you taking the time to unpack the new technology. I know that Web App Builder has been around for a long time, and so being able to make the change is always somewhat challenging. So as we are seeing if there's any questions, I do see that there's one that's come in. Heather has one that is, if you want to do custom widgets, you would need to host on an enterprise. Is that something you could answer or address?
Yeah, so creating custom widgets in Experience is just like with Web App Builder. So you just, when you're running it, you have it locally on your machine, and so you can write all of the code there. I just have it on my laptop, but I know we also run it on our server. And then it's the same if you have custom widgets or not when you push up the code and host it up on Enterprise or Eagle or wherever you're hosting it.
Okay, thank you so much. I hope that, Heather, I hope that answered your question. Deb has a question. Is there an easy way to port your Web App Builder maps over to over to the new experience builder, or do you have to recreate them? That's an excellent question. So are you able to port that we know of, or is that, could you make a custom thing that would let you port, or is it something that you just have to recreate it?
Yeah, that is a great question. Unfortunately, you do have to recreate it. And the reason for that is because they're on completely different code bases. So that's when I was talking about how Experience uses React instead of Dojo. So you will have to recreate it, which is why you should check to make sure you have all of the widgets you need before you switch over to Enterprise.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you very much. Great question. We have a few more minutes. If there's any other questions, sure thing, Deb, anytime. Anything else? Any other questions that you have, please feel free. If you are thinking about them afterwards and you'd like to reach out to Malaika or myself, then I've only listed Malaika's information, so you can contact her. But please reach out. We're always happy to talk more about Web App Builder or Experience is something that's definitely in our toolkit, and we are happy to unpack any of that if you have any questions. If there is anything else, let me know. Otherwise, Nick, if we want to pass it on to the next presenter, I think we should be ready to go.
That sounds great. Thank you so much, Kat and Malaika. That's really intriguing stuff. I do have one question for you, Malaika. Now that you've made the switch to Experience Builder, is there anything that would make you use Web App Builder? Can you think of any reason that you would still want to use Web App Builder over Experience Builder?
Yeah, it really depends on what kind of application you're looking for. So I guess for me personally, when I'm looking at Experience, it's very user-friendly and very easy to make everything look pretty and nice. So more of a outward-facing application that's would be best to do in Experience for me personally. But Web App Builder still has so much more functionality. So if you're looking for an application that has just a lot of tools working with the map and they're not offered an Experience, then it might be best to wait for a little while until Experience has caught up to Web App Builder. Just so you don't have to recreate everything yourself. It'll take a lot of hours.
Okay, cool. Fabulous. Thank you so much.
Fantastic.
Well, all right, then with that, our next presenter is Lindsay Walker from ROK Technologies, and she's going to be talking to us about how to do GIS at home during COVID.
Hey, Nick, would you mind confirming that you can hear me okay?
I can hear you just fine, Lindsay, loud and clear.
All right, excellent. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to share my screen here, and if you would mind confirming that you can see it okay.
I gotcha.
Perfect. I'm trying to figure out a way that I can have my little question and answer thing. I'll come back to the question and answer. I want to make sure that I'm looking at that frequently. So I'm just going to minimize it over here. Just so everybody knows, I definitely want this to be like a very interactive presentation. So I'm definitely going to try and make sure that, there we go. Perfect. Oh, is that your desk? That's great, Dave. Anyway, I'm going to try and make sure that I take a look at the Q&A and at the chat, because I want to make sure that if you guys want to stop me and interrupt me at any point, you can. And I want this to be like a very informal talk because I want you guys to ask questions. So with all that said, I'm going to go ahead and get started here. Do this. Like I said, real informal talk. So please post it to the chat or to the Q&A if you have any questions. I'll keep an eye on that. Feel free to interrupt me. So like Nick said, I'm here today because I want to talk about how to do GIS at home during COVID, which is a very broad statement. I'm going to be distilling it down to a few things that I can actually talk about. Of course, there's tons of different topics here. There's a couple of them that I happen to do professionally, and I want to share some of that knowledge with you all. So first of all, I'm Lindsay. I'm the Director of GIS Managed Services over at ROK Technologies, and we're a company that specializes in GIS in the cloud. So this is a topic that's going to be really like near and dear to my heart, and I'm really excited to share the knowledge that is in this PowerPoint with you all that are on the call today. So the first thing would be, why am I here today? Well, I'm here today because my GIS friends have shared that they're struggling to work from home. okay? And so in talking to all the different GIS people that I know, I've heard all kinds of stuff. You know, I mean, obviously there's the stuff of like, well, I don't have a great desk, right? Or like my neck hurts because I don't have everything at the right ergonomic angle. But there's also other stuff. There's more technical concerns of like, well, I can't access my data. I don't have good performance. You know, a lot of my GIS friends never anticipated that they would be working from home, nor did their companies, right? Everyone's lives have changed so dramatically in the last few months, and they're going to continue to be this way for a while, right? So what I want to do today is share with you some tips and tricks that'll hopefully make your lives a little bit easier when you're working from home, whether your company had an existing work from home policy or if it's kind of like just, you know, figuring it out by kind of the seat of your pants type of thing. So there's a couple of things that I'd like you all to believe while we're going through this talk. I want to make sure that you believe that this talk will be accessible to anyone, no matter your technical background. The cloud does not have a high financial or technical barrier to entry, and you can be doing any type of GIS and still benefit from the cloud, okay? And I just want you to believe these things while we're going through this talk. You can go back to believing whatever you believed before after the talk if I don't convince you. But anyway, so I'd just like you to believe those things. And with this talk being accessible to anyone with any background, you don't have to be that technical. I'm going to define, terms as we kind of go through all of this. So I've dropped the term cloud a few times now. And so I want to first define what the cloud is. I mean, probably a lot of the people on the call know what it is, but it's one of those things you hear the term and like sometimes you're too embarrassed to ask because like everybody talks about the cloud and you never actually get to ask like, well, what the heck is the cloud? So I just want to define it real quick. The cloud simply means that somebody has gone out, they bought a giant warehouse and they put a whole bunch of computer servers in there. And they're basically allowing you to rent functionality from those computer servers a la carte. Okay, so basically, you just say, all right, of that giant computer server you have over there, I want to rent this percentage of functionality. And depending on what, company you're going with, Microsoft, Amazon, Google, or other private providers, all of those different things will have different names. They have different services, but ultimately you're just renting functionality of a computer server that lives in somebody else's giant warehouse, right? Some of the benefits of using the cloud: obviously, you're going to have way more processing power available to you, and you're going to have it available for super cheap, right? Because again, that's really the benefit of the cloud. Somebody else has gone out, created the giant consolidated warehouse, and because of that, they can offer things like storage and performance at really affordable prices, okay? You're also going to have higher security. The big providers like Google, Amazon, Azure, they take care of a lot of the security stuff for you so that you don't have to worry about it. There's going to be way more features available to you than you would ever dream of otherwise. And really importantly, everything when you're working in one of these cloud providers, you're renting out some of this functionality, doing all your stuff up in the cloud, everything is in the same geographic location. And that's important because when we're talking about digital data transfer, the further away you are from the data itself, the higher your latency. So if you can have all of your resources centralized in one place, then you're going to have much better performance. So that's the cloud. I just want to make sure everybody's clear on that. If you have any questions about the cloud, I got the question and answer in the chat pulled up here. So just post them in there as we go through. Like I said, feel free to interrupt me at any point. So our main topics today, we're going to be talking about, obviously, how the cloud can help you out with any level of GIS that you're doing. But we're going to kind of break that down into three major topics. So accessibility, security, and performance. How do we access the resources that we need? How do we make those resources our work when we're pushing things out? How do we make that secure at home? And how do we have the type of performance we want at home, right? Caitlin, that's a great question. So if you live in rural America, does that mean that your latency is prohibitively slow? Well, so for example, if you live up, there's a variety of things that go into like the concept of latency. One of them is obviously the internet connection, right? So that's one of the challenges that rural America has no matter what. But let's say that your office is in Denver and you actually live like up on the Western Slope. You're actually going and you're trying to connect to data that's back in your office. We'll get to this in a minute, but there's going to be a variety of issues that are going to affect your latency of trying to pull data from your office. And that's one of the things that a lot of my friends are struggling with. And it's actually something we're going to cover on one of the subsequent slides under accessibility. So anyway, we're going to talk about accessibility, security, and performance. And very much related to Caitlin's question is going to be accessibility. So when we talk about accessibility, I want to talk about basically two things: the actual access of the data, but then I want to talk about collaboration. How are we going to set things up to be collaborative? How are you going to work with people in this new remote way? Remember, all of this is new. I'm coming at this from like a perspective that potentially, your company didn't have a work from home policy, or the work from home policy that they had, wasn't really set up for everyone working from home, any of that sort of thing. So we've got those kind of two big buckets. How do you access stuff, and how are you going to be collaborative with your coworkers? So let's talk about what your current accessibility challenges might look like. So you need, number one, a fast computer, right? We're GIS people. And that's going to be one of the biggest challenges for us, is we need a lot of horsepower in order to run the software that we do, okay? So basically one of those things, one of the issues you might be facing is that you don't have a computer that you can take home, right? That might be a big challenge. Maybe your IT department, maybe they were like, hey, here's the requirements you need in order to get your software to perform well. We'll buy you a desktop computer, right? Which is cool if you're at the office, but maybe not the easiest thing to take home. You're also going to need access to your data. So your office networks, there is totally potential that they never had a work from home policy previously. And so those networks were never optimized to push data out externally, right? So that might be an issue. There's also access to software. Maybe there are licensing issues, version issues, security issues that are going to be a challenge for you to actually access the software. So when we talk about where data lives, to Caitlin's question about that latency concept, there's the internet connection, which maybe you have good internet, maybe you don't. There's also going to be the concept of the latency, the geographic latency. And so being a little ways away from your office, you're not going to have the highest latency in the world, but it will affect your ability to get data, particularly if your office networks were never set up to push that data out externally. Also, a very common thing that I see is actually that companies that have many different locations tend to have like one centralized license server. What that means is when you have like AutoCAD or ArcMap and you're trying to like access a license, maybe that license lives in California and you're in Colorado trying to access that license. And that actually is a ton of latency and causes all kinds of challenges with ArcMap and AutoCAD. So there's always components of where does the data live, where does your software live, and then finally like the actual like horsepower. How do I access my data and actually work with it and have enough horsepower to do that, okay? So the second bucket that we talked about was the collaboration bucket. So what do our current collaboration challenges look like? Well, there's going to be more of a need for data collaboration. You used to be able to just walk over to somebody, print out a paper map and be like, hey, what do you think about this? Well, now you have to send that map. And not only do you have to send that map, but you have to send the associated data and files and that sort of thing, right? And sharing that data is harder. You used to be able to just throw it onto a thumb drive, walk over to your coworker, give them the thumb drive, and they could just plug it right in, right? Or the external hard drive, whatever it was. Now you might be trying to transfer 10, 15 gigs of data or much more, and it is going to be slow. And how do you send that data, right? Like you don't want it to, it used to not leave the building, so you don't want to like email it. It could get intercepted. Like, do you have a secure file transfer set up? Maybe not. So those are like some of the security concerns for collaboration. So we've got both accessibility challenges and collaboration challenges. And so, of course, like I said, I'm going to be talking about how the cloud can help you with all this stuff, right? So when we're talking about this stuff, the big one is pushing data out externally. Your office was never, if the data lives on computer servers that are at your office, more than likely your office was never set up to push that data out externally. And if they were set up to push it out externally, then, maybe they were never set up for as many users as you have right now trying to access it. Also, your office was probably not designed to push data out externally with really good performance and to promote collaboration between remote users. And finally, it probably also wasn't designed to allow users from many different geographic locations to access the same resources. The cloud does all of this. The cloud is designed to push data out externally. It's designed for remote users. It's designed to promote collaboration between people who are all across the globe. Because remember, all of your resources are in the same location. It makes it much easier for data transfer, to collaborate, makes it much easier for you to upload data, download data, and the security piece is huge, right? So let's talk about the next part, which is going to be that security component that I've brought up a few times, okay? So what are some of our current security pain points? Well, there's going to be the challenge of sending data to a coworker. Again, it used to be that your data never left your office potentially, and now you're suddenly on the internet, not an intranet, and not on like a little thumb drive you can just walk over. You got to send your data to a coworker. You have to get that data out to your users, and you have to access your on-premise resources. And you might have all kinds of problems with that, right? So when it comes to accessing your on-premise resources, maybe you only have a Chromebook at home, right? And your IT says, no, you got to have Windows, and you got to have, you know, Windows 10, and it's got to have all these parameters. And you're like, well, I've only got a Chromebook. I need to still be able to get to my on-premise resources, but maybe your computer is not in line with your company's IT posture. Getting the data out to your users and sending data to coworkers. Transferring data can always be a security pain point, especially in more traditional IT structures, right? Ones that were not designed for many, many users working remotely and pushing data out externally. So with the cloud, what you get, you can have very high level security for next to nothing. Okay. And remember at the beginning of this talk, I said you have to believe that there is not a high barrier to entry with the cloud, even though it seems real like, you know, tech savvy and real awesome. You know, like you can really get into it and have at a baseline much better security for very affordable or free. Okay. You've also got the reputation. So if you're sitting here as a GIS person and maybe you've never really communicated that much with your IT previously, you know, with the reputation component, you're trying to figure out with your IT, hey, we're going to be working from home for a long time. I need my GIS resources to be available to me from home. And your IT is saying, we'll come up with a plan for me. Well, if you come up to them and you say, hey, I've got all of this documentation from this very well-trusted company, Azure, or AWS, or Google, you know, and I want to use those cloud resources, I have endless documentation on what the security posture is, what the details are, and it's trusted by organizations like the military, the government, Fortune 500 companies. Your IT can't argue with that. Like I said, it's IT approved. There's tons of documentation, information, support, that sort of thing. So finally, this is probably going to be the one that y'all are most interested in from like a performance perspective, because as GIS people, like that's what we endlessly struggle with, right? And there are days where it just seems arbitrary. Like ArcMap is just not going to work today. Pro is just not going to work today. So with the cloud, there's so much performance power that's available to you. So let me talk about a few of the challenges that you might be facing right now. Maybe some of these quotes have come out of your mouth, right? I don't have a good computer at home. My company's network isn't optimized for external work. Getting data to others is really slow. Or finally, GIS is just different. And so IT doesn't understand my requirements and I'm having a really hard time working from home because of it. Well, so I'm going to take all those excuses away. And so maybe you guys are going to be unhappy about that, maybe not, I don't know. But this is going to be one of the more important concepts, one of the most easily accessible, immediate entry, easy, potentially free concepts that I just want to throw out there is the concept of a virtual desktop. This is especially right now when you're struggling to work from home. Maybe you've never expected to work from home before, okay? And so maybe you only ever had like a Chromebook or a tablet, and that's all you really have available to you, but you still need to run ArcMap, you still need to run Pro. Well, this is where a virtual desktop comes into play. And a virtual desktop is a really simple kind of concept. Basically, it is just a computer server that you're renting, some functionality in the cloud, but it comes in the form of looking just like a little laptop, and you just stream an image of that virtual desktop. All the processing actually happens up in the cloud, and that's the power of it. And you can stream, you can look at these virtual desktops and use them by any internet connected device. So that includes cell phones, that shouldn't say tables, tablets, and Chromebooks, right? So anything that's connected to the internet is going to be able to stream, view, and utilize these virtual desktops. And so there is potential that you can run ArcGIS Pro better on a Chromebook than you've ever seen it run on anything else. Like I said, one of the big benefits of the cloud is that you have endless amounts of processing power immediately available to you. So this is not to mention all of this that I've talked about so far. Like I said, I wanted this talk to be accessible to anybody. So we're not talking about the cloud at a real high level. We're not talking about it in terms of enterprise GIS. We're talking about it for anybody. You do open source GIS, you do just shape files and file geodatabases. Any kind of GIS you do, the cloud can help you, right? And then as you do start to move up in terms of the GIS tiers, up into that really advanced like enterprise GIS type of stuff with ArcGIS Server and Portal and high availability, redundancy, things like that, That's where you really have to have the cloud, but it can benefit you at any level, any point in your GIS lifecycle. But some of the things to look forward to, if you do get involved with the cloud now, you're going to have databases that perform better than databases that you could spin up anywhere else. You're going to have analytics and ways to run your code that you'd never dream possible. The automation is going to be absolutely killer. And finally, you're making huge moves towards the future with just a few simple steps, okay? So just like very simple steps, and we're actually going to do a demo here in just a few minutes, assuming that I have the time. But like the few simple steps that you take here, it's going to be massive in terms of making those steps towards the future, because you're going to be educating yourself on the direction that things are going. You know that you're going to need some type of cloud presence, whether it's your own private cloud or whether you're using one of the big providers. You know you're going to need that when you get to the really advanced enterprise stuff. So even if you're doing basic GIS now, why not benefit from the performance, the security, and learn more about it now? So like I said, we're going to do a bit of a demo. Let me just make sure here that I've got enough time, and I do. It's great. So this little demo, you're going to have to kind of bear with me. I might want to skip a couple little parts of it. I'm going to narrate it as we go. But essentially, I'm doing this demo from the perspective that I'm somebody who has never signed up for AWS before, okay? So keep that in mind when I was recording this. I wanted to show you exactly how easy it would be for literally any of you to go sign up for an AWS account and have all of those resources I was talking about previously available to you within like 4 minutes, okay? So essentially what you're going to see momentarily, I decided to do this demo with AWS, but you could do this with Azure, you can do this with Google, you can do it with any provider you want to. So I just Googled Amazon Web Services. I'm going to click on Get Started for free, okay? I'm going to pause the video here. Now, you probably need to do some research on exactly what the free tier is and whether it applies to you and what it looks like. But Amazon offers a huge amount of functionality for free. Okay, it's such a huge resource that's available to you. So it's definitely something I want to encourage you to check out. So here I'm going to use just like an extra email that I have, and I'm going to go ahead and just sign up for a new AWS account. No steps have been skipped. Okay, so like it really is just this straightforward to sign up for a new AWS account, and it's similar with like Google or Azure as well. Okay, so I pick a few usernames, throw in an email, give them a little bit of information about, my company name and address and that sort of thing, and pop through all of that. And then we get to the credit card page, and I didn't share my credit card number with you all because I'm sure some of you might be tempted to have, spending sprees. And so we kind of skip through that part. You put in your credit card number. Now, this is actually something I do want to point out here. There are the free tier limits with AWS. You have to put in a credit card because, obviously if you do something crazy, something that's like resource intensive, they're going to charge you for it. So like I said, it is your responsibility to go look at that free tier and kind of see what applies to you. But there's a ton that you can get done with the free tier. And potentially you don't ever end up having to really pay for a whole lot of anything. Now, something else to mention here is that this is not really applicable to enterprise GIS. When you're talking about those high performance, products from Esri, the, ArcGIS server and portal and all that sort of thing, obviously that's going to have to run off of more resource intensive machines. But when we're talking about like, hey, I just need to fix the problems that I'm having right now working from home. I need some more resources available to me. I need a computer that can actually handle ArcMap. That's what we're really talking about here. Just get it up, get it running. Maybe look at the free tier. Maybe it's applicable to you, okay? So you put in some information. I put in my phone number. I'm gonna throw in a verification code here. Real exciting stuff. I'm gonna skip through this part just a little bit so it's not like watching paint dry. And then there we go. That's it. I now have access to the Amazon Web Services console. So immediately within this console, some of the most basic and powerful things that you can do, you're going to go ahead and you're going to sign in. You can always talk to me if you want to know more about root users and IAM users and that sort of thing. But this is just a basic setup. You're just going to put in the email that you signed up with. And once you get to this console, some of the things you have right away, like I said, believe me when I say that there is not a high barrier to entry here in terms of technical knowledge. You can have S3 available to you, which is the simple storage solution available from Amazon. You can store terabytes of data per month for like cents and dollars. I mean, nothing. You can store so much data and you can access it so quickly. It's amazing. The other big thing that we're going to focus on through the rest of this little video, and we've only got 2 minutes left. So, I mean, you're spinning up this whole account. You're getting access to all these resources. You're potentially doing it for free, and all of it's happening in like 3, 4, 5 minutes, right? The next big thing that we're going to talk about is, let's skip ahead just a little bit. We're going to be talking about workspaces. Okay. So remember, one of the big pain points that I'm hearing from folks is like, I don't have a computer at home that can run ArcMap or run ArcGIS Pro. Well, workspaces are one of the virtual desktop solutions that you can deploy in Amazon Web Services. And it's probably one of the easiest ones that you can immediately get it up, get it running. With workspaces, it's going to act just like having a little mini laptop. Okay. So I'm going to click in here. I'm going to click on workspaces. I'm going to deploy them. It's going to take you over to this website or this page of the Amazon console. When you do spin up a workspace the first time, it takes maybe 20 minutes to become available. But really all you do to spin up the workspace is you just go through a couple of simple prompts. Okay, so you're basically going to identify users, determine what kind of workspace, what tier you want to use. So that's going to be performance, right? Just kind of walk through that and get to that point. It's being launched. I've launched it. We're going to skip ahead a little bit, and here it is. Okay, so obviously demos make things look a little bit easier than they are in like all actual reality, but I promise you I did not skip many steps here. So from going to the point where the workspace is being launched, once it is launched, all you have to do is install the workspace client, which is available like via Google. And all you have to do is just grab a couple of numbers about that workspace and you plug it into the workspace's client, and now you can launch what is essentially a little mini laptop, okay? So the power of this is that you can install ArcMap, ArcCatalog, you can have it run Windows. So if your IT is telling you something along the lines of like, hey, if you want to access your data, you're going to have like a minimum of like Windows 10 or something, right? You have that available to you. These workspaces can be as powerful as you want them to be. So if you're really trying to do some like high-end, pro stuff, workspaces are one option. You can also spin up Citrix in the cloud, which is an excellent option for getting really good performance out of Pro. There's all kinds of stuff you can do with workspaces. But in terms of like addressing an immediate need right now, like during the whole COVID situation, what you just saw was me signing up for an Amazon workspace or an Amazon Web Services account. And spinning up a workspace and doing all of that for free within the free tier. And it took us all of like 4.5, 5 minutes. Okay. And what that gets you is immediately it gets you access to a secure, high performing, virtual desktop that essentially acts like a laptop. And like I said, there's so many other like really high-end things that you can do with the cloud. And that's what ROK specializes in as a company, right? Is like helping people to do the really, really high-end stuff. But we can also help you out with the small stuff too. How easy it is for anybody to get started with the cloud and to immediately benefit from it. So let's go on here. We're going to talk about some of the takeaways here. If you're having a problem working from home, especially a technical problem, there is definitely a solution. If you don't have enough snacks or other problems like that, I can't help you with it, but I bet there's probably a solution for that too. Reaching out for assistance and making your home work life easier is very, very important. Again, like you saw, it takes 5 minutes to spin up, a virtual desktop in the cloud that can probably solve a lot of your pain points. And the cloud can benefit you no matter what type of GIS you do, right? We didn't even talk about the fact that maybe you are running enterprise GIS and you're doing really cool stuff with it, but suddenly, your company never had a work from home policy and now you're having to try and do, enterprise high-end GIS from home. The cloud can benefit you so much in that regard, but even if you're just using those shapefiles and file geodatabases, the cloud can still help you out tremendously. So I really appreciate everybody's time today. I've got some contact information here, and I think I have finished with just enough time for 10 minutes worth of questions. So anybody have any questions? I know that's like a huge fire hose of information, but I hope I was hoping to at least get enough ideas out there to, kind of like wet the whistle, right? Like get the creative juices going and just expose you to some of the things that are immediately available to you.
Hey, Lindsay, yeah, I'll just add a comment on there. I've been recently turned on to the Amazon workspaces myself. And one thing I think is really cool is you have the ability to scale up and down your performance. You can go just in that menu at the top of the Amazon workspaces and you can choose from like running 4 processing cores to 8 processing cores to 16 cores. So if you have some really big raster process you're trying to run that's going to be a huge lift, you can just temporarily increase your processing power and charge through that huge process, and then you can just scale it back so that you're not paying for 16 cores all the time. And yeah, I've been very impressed with the system.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. Something to just mention there is that there are some options, like, so the workspaces, like with the cloud, it's kind of like different tiers. Like this is your entry level tier. You get into it, you start experiencing it, and then you can kind of move up in the world. Amazon workspaces are totally awesome. Especially with Pro and like some of the stuff that you were talking about, like rasters, you can also run Citrix. You can deploy Citrix in the cloud, which is something that we do for a lot of people. And I'm telling you, I had no idea Pro could run like that. Like that's how Pro was like meant to run in Citrix, and it actually can be a bit more affordable depending on how you configure it than workspaces. But that's like the thing about the cloud. You have bazillions of different solutions available to you. And Nick, you made a great point about being able to like scale up your resources, scale down the resources. You can also stop the resources if you're not using them, and then you can start them back up when you do want to use them, right? And you're only paying for what you use, which is huge. Are there any other questions that I can answer?
I have one more for you. Do you recommend any one over the other for any particular purposes? Azure versus Google versus AWS. Do any of them have any strengths or weak points over the others?
You know what? You're going to be stuck with the lingo for a while. So pick one whose lingo you like. Yeah, I'm just kidding. Like, it does. I would not say so. I mean, they're all awesome cloud providers. We work with all of them. It just kind of depends on, a lot of times, the decision that ends up making the kind of call on whether it's Azure, AWS, or Google is kind of what your company already has, right? If you're really into like the Microsoft like ecosystem, Azure may end up being the option for you. Or if your company already has like an AWS presence, then you may just end up going with AWS, right?
Okay.
I see a couple of other questions here as well. One from Karen Rogers. Let's see, does ROK assist clients getting environments set up in one of the cloud providers you listed? Do you work with any and all of them? Yep, so at ROK, that's what we do day in and day out, is we help people to deploy GIS in the cloud, okay? So we help people with Azure, Google, AWS, and we do deployments of all sizes. So we do small deployments and we do massive deployments, massive, highly available deployments. We help people who are doing extremely high-end things with GIS, and we also help people who are just getting into GIS. So yes, absolutely, Karen, that's what we do. That's what we specialize in. And then Shelby has a question of, does ROK do ArcGIS Enterprise implementation jumpstarts in addition to supporting hosted environments? So we actually work kind of like a tripod with Esri Professional Services. So essentially what we do at ROK is we can do a variety of different things. So we can, if you're interested, like if you're a tech savvy person and you want to run the environment yourself, but you just don't have time to like set everything up, because it can be a little time intensive if you want a real robust system that supports enterprise GIS. We help people just stand up systems, and then just kind of like, we can be on retainer if you have questions. We also fully manage systems for people. Now, when it comes to more of like the workflow components of, how does this Esri product benefit your organization? That's where we work really well with Esri Professional Services. So we can help you out with like the tech side, with the configuration of the ArcGIS software, getting it to run really, really, really well. And then for the workflow type of stuff, we kind of pair you up with Esri Professional Services, and they can help a lot in that regard. So that's kind of what we do there. But we do offer managed services so that like if you want to have a cloud-based system and you want to solve a lot of these pain points, like having people access things from different locations, having good performance, high availability, we can take care of managing that whole system for you and offer hours to essentially help to augment your GIS team. So let's see here. Any other big questions that I missed in here? I think those were all the questions that were in the chat box. Any other questions anybody has? And you can totally shoot me an email if you yourself just like have simple questions about the cloud, or if you want to know more about what ROK does, you can email me anytime. So thank you, everybody. I really appreciate your time.
Hey, thank you, Lindsay. We really appreciate that. That was very intriguing. I'm definitely going to look into getting one of those free workspaces spun up myself and experiment around with that. All right, everyone, we have one presentation left this morning. It is from Shelby Hines, and I think we have Dave Valancourt online too, from Esri. And they're going to be talking to us about ArcGIS capabilities for emergency management. Thanks so much, Shelby and Dave, and I'll turn it over to you.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Nick. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and make sure you could see it before I get started. Can you see my screen?
I can hear you loud and clear and see your screen.
Okay, great. Well, thanks so much for having me today. My name is Shelby Hines, and I work out of the Esri Denver office. I support local government in their use of ArcGIS, mostly in Colorado and New Mexico. I'm really excited to present on this topic. I have a background in emergency management, mostly on the mitigation planning pre-disaster side of things. I came to Esri from FEMA Region 8 a little bit over 4 years ago. And so here we go. So responding to emergency management challenges and increasingly complex hazards is difficult and requires professionals to become more agile and informed. And so I'm hoping that this presentation I have a handful of slides and a couple demos will sort of provide a glimpse into some of the newer tools that can help achieve that goal. I started by just throwing in a couple JAX slides, all right guys, from the virtual UC that was a few weeks ago now. And this is really just to set the stage on sort of what's happening in the community with the use of GIS. This first slide shows public safety and emergency management use cases and scenarios on how GIS is making communities safer and more resilient. I'll point out a couple examples. The Arizona statewide emergency management dashboard is pretty fantastic. If you haven't seen it, check it out. The next gen 911 work that the partners listed on the slide are doing, they're using ArcGIS to plan for putting in next gen 911 systems across the country. You can see on the slide crime analysis, fire analysis, visualization and coordination for special events. Also, citizen reporting tools are now baked into Esri software. On the disaster preparedness and response side, we're facing disasters around the world caused by climate change or naturally occurring disasters, or in some cases man-made disasters. And so this slide shows some of the work being done in response to the monsoon flooding in Japan. Last year, the Amazon fires that wiped out literally landscapes of area. And then, of course, other risk analyses and damage assessment work to support emergency management operations and activities. Okay, so now we're switching from Jack slides to Shelby slides. Here we go. So on the left-hand side of the slide, you see emergency management phases, of course, and then on the right-hand side are capabilities or patterns of ArcGIS use. And the Esri stack really makes these a reality, right? When combined and configured correctly, you can really see a boost in productivity and effectiveness of your workflows. The exciting part is to be able to apply these capabilities, of course, to the emergency management challenges. So by emergency EM challenges, I'm talking about, being in a constant state of preparedness, right? As an organization or as a local, state, federal agency. Understanding who, when, where, and what is likely to be impacted or is being impacted before, during, and after a disaster event. Being dynamic and providing real-time operational briefs, running effective recoveries and communications with the public. Of course, all while disasters get worse and more costly and frequent, and of course with limited resources as well. A couple things to point out from the right-hand set of patterns. Field mobility, in the context of emergency management, really lets you improve the visibility into the operational aspects of an event and equip, the personnel in the field with up-to-date data. There's a couple points I want to make while I'm talking about field mobility. Check out ArcGIS Tracker if you haven't seen it yet. It's a mobile app that's fairly new to the stack that actually tracks your location and keeps that breadcrumb of where you've been using the GPS on your mobile device. So it might be, in a search and rescue effort, you can see where folks have been out in the field. Also wanted to mention Workforce has just been rebuilt from the ground up. Workforce enables you to dispatch assignments out to your field workers. One of the new benefits is that you can now take a Workforce project offline. Also want to mention that there is a new tool coming to Esri field apps called ArcGIS Field Maps. Okay, so it's in beta right now, and what it does is it's going to bring together capabilities from several of the ArcGIS apps into one. And that includes capabilities from Explorer, Collector, Tracker, Workforce, and Navigator. So I mentioned it just so that you're aware that it's coming. It's a big shift, and I think, if you already have implemented a field app, you will appreciate having the other capabilities right alongside it and easy to configure in the one app. All right, so moving down almost to the bottom of that list there, Esri supports constituent engagement. And I'm going to be talking about that during my demo. Constituent engagement is sharing of information, right, with the public, with partner agencies or other stakeholders. And to that end, ArcGIS Hub is an online platform that enables you to collaborate and share resources. And that's where in the world of emergency management, you can get at community resiliency and a basis to make more informed decision making. Okay, so next slide. One way that you can put these patterns into practice is by leveraging ArcGIS solutions. And the solutions are listed kind of on the outside of the phases of emergency management on this slide. And solutions are templates. They're configurations of ArcGIS that are designed to meet specific business needs. They're fully supported, so you can leverage Esri tech support to implement and configure them, and they're no additional cost. So they come with your ArcGIS subscription. They enable you to deliver these apps and capabilities quickly, stay current with the tech, and enable, kind of the geospatial piece for more people, both internally in your organization and to the community you serve, whether that's the public or a different community. You can deploy these solutions into your ArcGIS online organization or into your portal using something called the Solutions Deployment Tool. It's an add-in to ArcGIS Pro, and it's a task group that lets you deploy and configure the solutions and load data into them. So you're doing it from the desktop side, basically pushing and deploying it into the web GIS side. There's also a new ArcGIS Solutions app that I'm gonna show you in a minute here. All right, and then in terms of the demo, I am going to, starting kind of on the upper right, I'm gonna show flood impact analysis, which is a configuration of ArcGIS Pro. So it's a pro project. The solutions are either web apps or pro project configurations. I guess I'm trying to say they're not only web apps. And And flood impact analysis lets you develop flood impact scenarios on facilities and infrastructure. Know Your Zone is all about evacuation zones, and then the hub template is a configuration of ArcGIS Hub. All right. So the first place I'll go, can I just confirm that you can still see my screen? Just want to make sure.
I'm still seeing it just fine, Shelby.
Okay, good, thanks. Okay, so I'll start at the solutions site. So all the documentation and resources around the solutions are at solutions.arcgis.com. I like navigating this site through the gallery tab because you can filter along the left-hand side by industry or by product or application within ArcGIS that is configured to meet the need. So if I click on emergency management, each one of these thumbnails represents a solution and has its own web page that explains its intent and what type of tech you need to stand it up, etc. And also kind of step by step on how to deploy it and configure it. I wanted to show you how to get to that new solutions app. This is the new homepage. This is ArcGIS Online org configured with the new homepage capability. It looks pretty clean and slick. Under my app launcher in ArcGIS Online, I now have a button for solutions. So I mentioned that solution deployment tool that's an add-in to Pro. That the add-in to Pro contains all the solutions at solutions.arcgis.com. This new solutions deployment method contains a subset. Excuse me, as far as I understand, they will all be available through this app. But like if I click into the coronavirus business reopening solution, I can just now click Get Now, and that solution will deploy into my ArcGIS Online organization, which is pretty awesome because that means I don't have to have a desktop license, right? I can be off and running with all within WebGIS, which is pretty cool. Okay, so back to solutions. I'm going to open up that Pro project that is the flood impact analysis now. Like I said, this is a project to help build out scenario-based impacts. So you could use the results of these analyses in mitigation plans or response plans or any type of hazard planning efforts. What's unique about this Pro project is it comes with 2 task groups. And if you can see my catalog pane on the right-hand side of my project, I can see the 2 task groups. And the first one is getting to know the solution, so it kind of just walks you through what to be aware of in the solution. The second one is actually walks you through the steps. And if you're not familiar, tasks are, they bring together steps in a workflow in a sequential way that is repeatable for other maybe members of the organization, or if you are continuing to do, run through the same steps of something, check out tasks. They're pretty neat. So, this solution doesn't offer new capabilities to ArcGIS. What it does is it pulls together the tools into these tasks to make it much easier to get at, the end result. So the first couple steps are preparing your flood depth rasters. If you want to visualize the results in 3D, you also need to prepare a water surface elevation. The next group of tasks are related to actually doing the impact analysis. So you can bring any asset inventory to this solution, excuse me, whether it's lines or points. And then what it's doing is based on your defined flood scenario, it's tagging each asset with the depth of flooding at its location. And I can do it in batch. So say I have a 100-year flood depth grid and a 500-year flood depth grid. I can, ask this tool to say, analyze my buildings against those 2 flood extents. And it will add 2 new fields to this building layer and then pop in the flood depths at the building location for those 2 scenarios. From there, it's kind of all about sharing out the information. So I can actually create a 3D model of the results of the analysis. And then ultimately, I can push it back up into WebGIS, so into my portal or ArcGIS Online, to be able to really easily share it with, planning groups or other stakeholders or at public events or you name it. So obviously we can see the flood depth grid is in blue. The darker the blue, the deeper the flood. And I have the results of the analysis symbolized for each of the different asset types. Red shows deeper flood depths. In the case of the bridges show height above water. So the lower the number, the worse off you are. If I kind of zoom in here a little bit, I can start to see some buildings that came back with pretty deep flood numbers. I can also see my roads. So the tool kind of segments off the roads and tags them with the flood depths, which is really great for, evacuation planning and things like that. And then this same area of buildings, I can flip into a 3D visualization. And, it's just a compelling and impactful way to visualize the results of the analysis. So it's just a really cool add-on to the capabilities of this solution. Okay, next solution is a new one to the stack. It's called Know Your Zone. And this one might be, I think I have copied an address, yeah. I can enter my address and find out what zone my house is in, for example. And this might be related to a direct order for evacuation, or just for me to know, okay, I'm in zone B. When I'm looking at the media around this, maybe it's a hurricane that's coming up the East Coast, for example, or in our case out west, maybe it's a wildfire perimeter that we're watching closely. But knowing I'm in zone B, I can follow the directives that are coming through the media or social media, etc. Speaking of public information, I'm going to now show you a ArcGIS Hub. So this is a new template. This is ArcGIS Hub. It's, like I said, it's a collaborative platform that is part of ArcGIS Online. And ArcGIS Hub is an evolution of Esri open data. So if you guys remember that open data capability came along a few years ago, and it's evolved into this amazing capability and platform that lets you collaborate pretty closely with the community. So this is a Hub template that is available with Hub Premium. And this is highly configurable. It's a drag and drop interface. Notice I have some data-driven statistics up top here. Nobody's actually editing these numbers. They're just driven by the underlying database or data set that they're tied to. I can have kind of a situation awareness map so that the public knows what's happening in our city. I can also link off to relevant resources and relevant apps. This is the shelter locator solution, where I can just drop a point on the map and it will go out and set a buffer. It's a user-defined buffer, so I could open up that buffer. I can click on a shelter and identify, whether there is availability in that shelter and what the status is of the shelter. In this template, there's a configuration of Survey 123, so it's a survey form that lets people get involved and submit information about their skills and availability and things like that. I have social media feeds, and then I also have citizen reporting of damage and storm debris. So a really great way to get the community involved and to help target those initial efforts around a disaster response. There's some more data-driven statistics, and then here's that open data capability. And it's interesting, it more and more I see it kind of falls at the bottom of hub sites, because a lot of times the app or the statistics or other content on the hub site answers the question that the user is looking for, where they don't necessarily have to grab the data anymore to get their question answered. We see a lot of use of ArcGIS Hub from federal agencies. FEMA uses Hub. This seems to be kind of their main hub site. It's really nice. They have a page for the recent hurricane. I've also seen FEMA put out hub sites specifically for disaster events, and lots of great resources. It's a landing page to bring together, content around a theme. I mentioned federal. We also see, on the local gov side, Hub really was a shining star and is in coronavirus response and recovery. Again, just there's so much information to share and so many resources that need to go out to the citizens that it's a great place to do it. I mentioned I have the background in mitigation planning. I also am excited about local gov using Hub to support their mitigation planning processes. This is my city of Ski Town. This is not real, but I could have citizens follow the site and keep up with what's happening with the planning process and receive notifications and things. I've described what the planning process looks like and provided an app that lets folks, that solicits feedback around our mitigation project plan. And then I can link off to something like a document, to give the public and stakeholders, and maybe it's my local hazard mitigation planning team, the opportunity to comment in just a more sort of streamlined, efficient manner. And then what I'm going to end on is this last hub site. This is a site that I have been working with the Polis Center from the University of Indiana on to support the Indiana Silver Jackets team. So Silver Jackets exist across our country, and they are state-led interagency teams. The Indiana team seems to be especially active, and their goal is to support flood risk reduction and other natural hazard risk reduction across the state. On this site, we have kind of a current conditions across the state of Indiana map. All this data is coming from the Living Atlas. Also have the Twitter feed from their state DHS office. Data-driven statistics, actual data. They are, so I'm going to show you the open data capability with this Lowhead Dams data set out of Indiana. And so as the user, if I'm looking for a data set, what's so awesome about Esri Open Data is I can actually explore the data before I ever download it. So I can click onto features and see attributes about them. I can click on this data tab and see the actual attribute table. And I can filter the table, and then I can download it in these different formats. You can also configure Open Data to download into a file geodatabase as a feature class. Or I can grab the REST or the web service endpoint and just pull it directly into my own WebGIS without having to go through that download process and republish. I think that's all. I've got some additional resources down here on the bottom. And then you'll notice that I have a couple other pages that are linked off of the header of my site. And the one I want to highlight is called Indiana Silverjackets internal. And I have access to that page because I'm logged in. And what's so cool about Hub is I can collaborate around a smaller group, a subset of people. So there's a concept called community identities, where members of the public or external agencies from the host agency can collaborate in the hub. So this ISJ page is only shared with a subset with my ISJ members, and that can be people that have user accounts in the host organization and also members of the community. It can also include people with ArcGIS Online organizational accounts external from this host org. So that's really powerful because I can share content. In this case, we're working on kind of this mock statewide shelters initiative where, I can come in here and click my edit widget and do something like flip the status of a shelter, and really be able to collaborate around projects and data that way. So, when I sign out, now I'm going to be a member of the public. You notice that ISJ internal page disappeared from my header, and ArcGIS Hub is not letting me access that page. So that's a very powerful capability. Everything on that page is shared only to that subgroup of ISJ members. So you can kind of have the mix of like the constituent engagement public piece and internal collaboration piece. So gosh, I'm looking at the time. I'm not even sure what time I started, but that's what I've got today, guys. And I think I'd say of course, start small and start with quick wins, and to get the buy-in from your colleagues and your organization to move forward with more of these capabilities. I hope you have some new ideas about how to leverage solutions from ArcGIS, and like I said, when you start small, you can really evolve and grow from there. And with that, I think I'll close out my piece, and if we have time for questions, that's great. I have not been looking at the Q&A, so I will do that.
Thank you so much, Shelby.
Hey, you're so welcome.
Yeah, hey, yeah, questions, comments, thoughts for Shelby or for any of our presenters as we kind of close out this morning's session? Anyone heard any good jokes lately? I asked yesterday and no one had anything.
Oh, I know one. I got a good one. When does a dad joke become, or let's see, hold on. Let's see, when does a dad joke mature? When it becomes apparent? See, I don't know that I have quite the cadence for it, but it was pretty good. I saw that on somebody's billboard. I have a coworker who just loves the dad jokes. It's horrible.
You got a nice response there in chat.
Yeah, that's the appropriate response to that joke, I think.
Well, thank you, Lindsay. I think that is an appropriate closing note for this session. So again, yeah, thank you all for joining us this morning. I hope this was all useful to everyone and you learned some new things. I know I certainly did. So yeah, please come back next week and join us. Starting next Tuesday, we have another morning of presentations for you. So I look forward to hopefully seeing all you guys logged on next Tuesday as well. And enjoy your days and have a good weekend.
So much. You guys take care.